Welcome back to the show. Today's topic: men should lead. A more fancier title was going to be "Men should lead, but lead themselves," and you'll understand why. So, what is leadership, or what is leading? So we all kind of have a general idea. Some better than others. Some maybe don't have any idea of it. So it really comes down to whatever you deem a leader to be. Many in our society would consider sports figures, depending if you like basketball, football, hockey, whatever, as leaders, coaches, the Vince Lombardis and all that stuff, like leaders of men, right? And then our second tier, even though it should probably be our first tier, would be like army generals, historical figures. So and then it just keeps on going down the line in what we personally associate with what is being a leader. And again, like with everything I say, it's all susceptible to whatever you deem the qualities of a leader is, right? And I'm not here to debate that part because it's all subjective in as to what and when is convenient or not, what just the information you take. And as I said, it's I don't want to make misleading headlines, I guess, in saying men should lead, but I as I stated a little bit, in a longer phrase, is but lead themselves, because we like to consider leader in an outward way instead of a inward way, where we take leadership in aspects of our life, in stuff in our own little circle, and be that kind of leader. We don't. I don't know if it's because we don't feel comfortable as men, or is it because just the term really, the definition, or just what it means to be a leader is not something that we understand fully, kind of are able to say, yeah, these are the like the way a leader should act or a leader should be. And again, it's all more or less susceptible to whatever it is that you have experienced. But we all, like I said, we all kind of have a general, not knowledge, but just an acceptance of what we deem it, even though if some of us don't believe it. And the reason we don't believe it, again, is just the lack of what it is to be a leader. We know what hard work is because you work hard. You know, you know the it takes certain hours to master something, and it's you 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 have to, and it's kind of like what they say, what, which I'm a believer for. I don't know about if they say. What I say is, I tend to try to lead by example, and the only way that obviously the only way you could do that is by doing whatever said thing is that you want to be done. I believe you have to put yourself in that position to be able to get the best outcome. And again, this is not about an outward leader. It's more about an inward leader. You'll understand why I even bring that up, just because it's something internally wired in me personally. Some people might have different definitions, leading from the back, again, with generals and in sports and history and so many other, fields where you could exhibit leadership attributes. Um, that's great, but for being able to lead yourself, or be able to understand anything, you have to put yourself through that discipline. You have to be able to understand how to lead yourself before even the concept of being a leader of other people becomes the norm, I guess. So monologue over or whatever. What is it? What is leading, right? And we already went through examples. You could go through historical, figures, sports legends, political people. Again, it could be attributed to teachers, even, again, police officers, firefighters. Again, the list is pretty much. Well, I'm sure it ends at some point, but for me, it could be unending because my mind doesn't go that far. I guess if you want to see as far as like, because it could be adaptable to a lot. You could be a leader in bowling. You could be a leader in your class. You could be a leader in a ton. I mean, it's just nature, it's human nature that certain creatures tend to be more dominant, be more aggressive, right? But is that leadership? Is that form of? It's a form of. It's an attribute. It's one sliver of the full thing of leadership, but it's not necessarily the what you should strive for. So when you're when you're leading someone, you're providing direction, right? Direction or guidance. We tend to try and lead other people, but not ourselves, which is exactly what I've been talking about. That we want to lead some super, in your job it might be a supervisor that is above you and is leading a group of 12 people or whatever, and that he doesn't know more than you, but yet he's barking out orders and stuff like that. And that is the norm. Like, people like to tend to, oh, that's not that's an outlier, and it isn't. It's the norm. People that don't know what they're doing lead other people that don't know what they're doing or don't want to learn what they're doing, which creates. How many studies is there about wasted productivity, about work injuries, happening? Um, it's it, pe- People that are the wrong leaders are leading people and are leading them into bankruptcy and leading them into injuries, leading them into infidelity, leading them into so many things. And you could just, it could be in any field. It could be your job, it could be your spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a pastor, it could be someone in authority, that because you just see them in a sense of authority, you automatically put this leader tag on them, and then causes you to see them in a certain light, which then modifies the way your internal networking works. And again, no one wants to go and combine, I want, in plain English, just the study of mind and the way the brain works, and then understand the way the development of human is, attributing culture to that, and just seeing the way that those latter examples affect the mind and the brain and the thought process, is something that is never talked about or hardly talked about, or only when someone remembers it, but doesn't attribute it to daily life, which is exactly what it should be, because it affects daily life. Then you hear whatever kind of gurus, coaches, whatever, focusing on this sliver where it's not the overall thing, where you have to acknowledge the effect that this has on the brain, right? So there was a famous quote once by Charles Barkley, I think was in the 90s, because people were looking at him as a role model. And I think he came out and straight said, like, that's you. Your father should be, or a cop or a teacher should be. Like, I shouldn't be a role model. And that right there just shows you the way the mind works, where just because someone's on TV, someone's a sports figure, all of a sudden all these tags and responsibilities that he didn't sign up for, but because he was talented enough and got to a certain platform in a certain era, he had to then modify who he was, just because, not through his own fault, but because the way the human mind is going. Hey, you're a leader. Hey, you need to watch what you say. Hey, you have to be cognizant of who's around you, which in theory, was that good advice, or is that good advice? Of course it is. You want to be all of those things. but it wasn't something that A, he earned, and B, he wanted. It was stuff that we attribute, and that's what we've done. Not even now is something that we've done throughout. My thing is the way we are being programmed subconsciously, that through all of these messages that we're getting. And I know I'm getting off a little bit off topic, but that is one of the running themes of me talking, is just the way, or not me talking, but the podcast that I've been doing. I always seem to be going into that or back to that, because I believe that is at the core of a lot of issues, whether it be dating, relationship, financing, what, at the core of it. I just believe that to be true. So once we recognize that we're being programmed daily, not in a malicious like Illuminati and all this kind of thing for world domination, it is just what it is. There's, branding and all that stuff. Just our world around us, the politics, it just forms a different, it is just what it is. It's the evolution of man. You can't really, deny it, even though you want to, you know, bend it to whatever fits your need. But anyways, I'm digressing way too much. So why did I bring up the Charles Barkley? Not again, but just why did I bring up the Charles Barkley example? Is because he didn't, he might have been a great teammate, a great leader to his team and to his surrounding, but if you knew Charles Barkley when he was a player, he was really aggressive. Some call dirty. That's up for you to decide. But one of the greatest players to play basketball. Most of the time, again, it's not the person's fault. It's us. We choose the leaders as the people. Whether it belongs to them. I mean, even if you saw the Game of Thrones and you saw Jon Snow through the whole thing, it pissed you off because they wanted to give him the leadership role and they followed him, but he kept on saying, "I didn't choose to be king. I didn't want to be king. I did not want it. I don't want it." He kept on just saying that he didn't want to be king. He didn't want to lead and all that stuff. So we, the people, choose the leader, and good or bad. Just because you are a leader and people claim you as a leader doesn't mean you're good. I mean, Adolf Hitler was, that way, adored by his people. And I think you can't find one person that says, "Yeah, you know what, that was he had the right idea." No, like, a lot of times, just because these people are in a position that they could be a horrible human being, but the fact that we elevate them automatically washes that for whatever reason. Oh, it's not really all that bad. He does more good. And it just becomes that way. But if you saw someone in a non-leadership role as an equal, you would chastise, or below, you would chastise and try to get rid of that person. So what I tend to tell people, or what I do myself, is I think leaders are great. I think through history, whether it be a conqueror like, Julius Caesar, Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, whether it be Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Wayne Gretzky in hockey, whatever it be, leader, it could be, Ronald Reagan, George Washington, or some political figure. Whatever it is, or maybe your bishop and your pastor, they're great because it gives us something to look forward or to look up to, something that we could inspire to be, something that could maybe change us in a deeper sense, where it could say, "Hey, I don't want to be a pope, but this, or whatever. I went to a pope. I don't know why I went to pope, but yeah, I want to be like this person. But I'm gonna aspire to be the best that I can be because he chose to be a pope. Just because I draw inspiration from the pope doesn't mean that I want to become anything involving with religion. I just admire his discipline, admire his attention to detail, and that's a healthy way to look at leadership, is to understand greatness when you see it, or attributes that are aligned to your moral compass, that will then say, "Hey, yeah, you know what, I might not be that or want to be that, but to be that, it takes this and that." And that's what I'm going to grab on, and I'm going to adapt it to being the greatest floor cleaner, the greatest warehouse supervisor, the greatest pianist that ever lived, the greatest actor that ever acted. So you attach them to you, and that's what makes great. And you hear a lot of self-help, betterment gurus and coaches say read memoirs, meet not memoirs but autobiographies, because you could draw inspiration from something outside your life. And I am a believer in that, because no matter how much you want to be able to live the life of thousands, for most of us, we'll never be doctors. We'll never visit a small island chain off of whatever the hell coast you want to be. You're not gonna have the 10-year discipline, 20-year discipline to study archaeology and be able to understand everything. So biographies and stuff like that are great sources to be able to live a life that you could have never and can't, because there's just not that much time. And that's when you hear a lot, learn from other people's mistakes, from their successes, because you can't create them all. So if even in studying, and people like to focus, study the failures, study the failures, study the failures, study the successes too, because that also leaves, lets you know that it does the same purpose. I hate when they focus more on the negative, but like don't make all these mistakes. Yeah, but you also want to mimic the successes, because that's going to lead you to more successes. So anyways, and not even anyways, I don't want I could have worded that better, but I hope people get it. If not, then I whatever. So it's great, right? Because you draw inspiration from them, and it's what I wrote right here was use leaders as a guide, and not worship them or focus on them being 100%. Like everything they do is perfect, and everything they do, I'm going to do. And why is that? Is because when they falter, and it's for sure that they're gonna falter, because we're all human. And we saw that this year in 2020 when the whole Jada Smith and Will Smith scenario broke out. I mean, how many men were shook by that? Because they had placed Will Smith in an alpha male status, in this leadership role, this mentor role, which is great. All the leadership mentor, that he was a man's man and all that stuff. For me, when that happened, it wasn't a shock, because we're all valuable. We're humans, we're not perfect. And even if we ourselves are perfect, our kids are sure as hell aren't going to be perfect. Your wife, your girlfriend ain't going to be perfect. Your family, your friends, they're not going to be perfect. And I'm a big proponent of saying, hey, if people don't match your energy, you move them off and stuff like that. Again, this is not a debate on to what route you take, and this happened, what my kids this, and my ex this, and my wife this, and this. That's neither here nor there. The point being on that part is that we place it on that. So then they're infallible. They can't do no wrong. But then when like the Will Smith happened, all of a sudden the same men that would put Will Smith and say, oh yeah, be like Will Smith, be an alpha man, all of a sudden are now throwing the hardest shade, or saying, are putting memes together and putting it out there on the internet, because now they have to justify themselves. Oh, he was this. Oh, he was that. Oh, it's because of this. It's because of that. And all these excuses. Why? Why did that happen? Because we focus too much on the idea of what it is to be a leader, not understanding many of these people that are calling Will Smith or Jada Pinkett Smith all these names or whatever, not just them, even scenarios associated with them, is only because they see some truth in themselves in that scenario. Where it's the same thing when you see in politics or in anything, even in sports. You have too much invested in a certain outcome that kind of checks off your belief system and keeps you in this mode. But it is what it is. But what I like to do is use them as a guide, like I said, just because it's easier when they do fall. My belief system doesn't fall with them. My belief system stays still remains intact, and I could still move forward, just as he will move forward. Will Smith, I mean, he hasn't lost a step. He's still, doing his thing after all that, turmoil, because it wasn't I mean, if you know the story, I don't want to say was his fault, not his fault. He wasn't, the outcome wasn't gonna change him because the it is who he is. He was already dealing with some of this stuff, I'm sure, before it came out, and he's still leading in his profession. He's still leading in his life. He's still leading in his message. And you think people are still not listening to him speak about, being happy, keeping yourself the focus, keep, striving for being great? This is Instagram or wherever he posts on now. It's more popular than ever. His stories that he comes out more popular than ever. Even more people are starting to listen to him now. Maybe it's because they relate. Maybe, as a lot in the manosphere, quote unquote, says, because he's like, the master simper now, because he just didn't, like, cuss Jada out on that Red Table Talk or whatever. And I know I'm harping a lot on this Will Smith, and trust me, it's December 2020, so it's not even current news or anything. And I'm not trying to just, oh, I wasn't around then, so I want to catch up and bring that in. It's the part that how many men currently put that much into this man, and then because he fell, or not he fell, because someone around him was fallible and fell, it turned on him again. Like I said, it's turned around, and I don't even think there was anything to turn around. I think there's just more men came and said, we have his back, and we still, that's messed up, and da 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 da. Again, not whether you agree on one side or another. That horse has been beaten on YouTube. There's no more. There's just dirt. There's just dust. And we could take it a little bit into a more morbid side. When Michael Jackson passed away, there was a lot of Asian Americans, or not even Asian people, in Japan and China and in these third world countries where he was really, really loved and adored, and even in Mexico, that ended up committing suicide because they looked at him, they worshipped him, they had him in this leader position in their life, that when he left this earth, they felt like they didn't want to be here with us, and they had to follow him, with him. And it's a very extreme version of it, and people like to characterize it, oh, no, 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 that's hero worship, and you can call it whatever you want. The purpose is that person is leading that person. That the Michael Jackson was the leader in this person's life. There was no Jehovah, there was no God, there was no Allah, there was no other thing. It was Michael Jackson at the forefront of this person. Whether you want to call him weak-minded, whatever kind of other thing, that person was allowing a pop sensation superstar be the leader in her mind. Same way about the Will Smith, and not even Will Smith, just people in our normal life that aren't even all that successful and great as a Will Smith. At least that, if you were in Will Smith's circle, it would mean that you were rich and, probably not famous, but you were doing well off in your life. A lot of times, males and females put leader positions in our personal lives, or in very important parts of our life, that neither have the qualifications to be a leader, and you should just not even listen to their opinion, words, or anything. But many of us do exactly the opposite and put them in these, we're like the president, and we're assigning them to the cabinet positions, and it's like untrustworthy, will backstab you, doesn't know what she's talking about, he's unloyal. So we don't even know what it means to we appoint the worst people in our lives to be in leadership positions. So when we do this stuff, it could lead, of course, into in the Michael Jackson, and even not even just the Michael Jackson. You could go back in history when emperors and kings died. There was mass suicide after that because of the demigod complex. But at the core of it, it was a leader. That person was leading. The same thing with Christianity or any religion. They follow someone. So if you're following something, you're following a leader, right? Because he's leading, you're following. So that's at the core, it's the leading. You could call it whatever, hero worshiping, narcissism, and or whatever. You could define it by any ways you want, and I think that's the problem, is that there's just too many definitions out, and you can't fix anything like that, because you have to go after the core, which is we are choosing poor leaders, and if we're choosing poor leaders in our lives, again, because of the programming, yeah, and then because of the programming, we're now choosing poorly, and then we choose wrong leadership in our own life. Then we allow wrong leadership in our circle. Then we allow that leadership to spurge into our professional life. Then we start voting, with that same horrible lack of what it means to be a leader. And you see where I'm going with this. It perpetuates the clusterfuck that we are in currently, even if when Biden becomes president, and it's been going on before Trump. The cluster that was the running joke. Go back and watch movies before the Trump presidency, and the ineptitude that most of us felt with Washington D.C. And again, I'm not sitting here in either side of the fence, because this is not what that show's about. But it just that's the thing, that if we allow poor leadership, the outcome is only going to be poor. So we want to get rid of the external forces, or the external quote unquote bad leaderships that we have around us. And the only way we could do that is by the same message that I've been saying, is turning inward. The only way you could be a great leader is by you yourself being a great leader to yourself. So we must be our own good leaders, not just in a broad sense. You gotta want to know what you want to be a good leader in, because you might be a great communicator, but you might be not great in your profession, or in your profession, but you might be not a good leader in your emotional life. And you'll see what I mean, because if you just say, I want to be a leader in life, I want to be a leader of men, I want to be a leader in my company, that's too vague. That's just too vague. There's no specificity, I guess. And I hear everybody, oh my God, you're having a double standard, because just like with the narcissism and hero worshiping, I'm like, we have to get rid of him. We have to do that, fix it with a broader brush. But it's not the same thing. It's that, well, that's not even what I said. What I would say, what I said is that in that instance is you want to go into the core, right? I get it. There's a lot of branching out with the narcissism, or in the examples about hero worshiping, and many other mental ailments that I'm sure many can come up with. But at the end of the day, or the end of the discussion, is that when you start going deeper and deeper and deeper, it tends to cone itself to a singularity. And when you come into a singularity point, or something where it is as close to, you need to focus on that, because that's the breakthrough. That's where the change is going to happen, because you can't fix just a little portion. You can't clean just a corner of your room. You have to clean your whole room. It just can't be the top right corner of a room because it fits and it makes you feel good. It has to be the whole room. It can't just be the carpet. It has to be making the bed, picking up your clothes. It has to be the whole room. It can't just be, you get what I'm saying. It has to be you have to be able to hit the bullseye, or as close to, in that aspect, to fix it. But when you're looking and saying, yeah, I want to be a leader, you have to be able to narrow it down, because it's fine when we're striving for something, right? We're now looking up. We're not fixing as we did in the first one. In the example, we're fixing, and when you're fixing, you want to narrow down. You can't just say you take your car. Now, I could go analogies for days, I guess, is what I could do, but I'm not gonna do. So when you want to fix something, you want to narrow that down. But when you're trying to expand, right? And in this case, we want to be better leaders. Yes, it's great to say, I want to be a better leader. And yes, it's great to expand. But once you do that, then you want to start narrowing down and focusing. And I'm not saying you don't have to do all of them. No, but you have to focus and then start, because you just through life, just because you're alive at whatever point you are in this, whenever you hear this, the recording, life has given you plenty of examples of proper and negative or bad leadership. So you've already are somewhere in. I'm gonna only give you a few examples, but there's many examples that you could develop and add, and just keep on going and going. And that's great if you do, because the more is the better overall leader you're gonna be. And that's basically all we could strive for, is to be the best overall leader. But just without getting ahead of myself again, life, just without hearing anything, your two eyeballs and your brain will have put you somewhere in that spectrum. My argument has been that social media and just the adaptivity of the electronics in our life has sped everything up as far as our development. And now it's subconsciously, not just now, it has been since this has come up in basically the last 100 years, probably a little bit more, a little bit less, give or take. But since that has been more of the way it is, now we have a new subconscious being developed, where now the disconnect that we're hearing is awe-inspiring to some when you hear them on Reddit or on when it breaks the news and it becomes a sensationalized. We then freak like, oh my God, but that is the internal rewiring that's going on. But anyways, I've already touched on that part, and I'm looking to do a more in depth part on it, but that's not specific to men, as far as like being rewired. I would have to kind of branch that out a little bit to the side, I guess, and talk about just the programming that's been going on. Again, whether you're a conspiracy theorist, tell me, hey, bro, like, this is project from 1920 something, and I get it. Those, it's all out there. I'm neither denying it nor accepting it. And if that's a discussion to have, it's been had, it's currently being had, and I could personally have it in a later time, but we'll let that for. What did they used to say in that sitcom? And I think it was How I Met Your Mother. Let future me handle that one. Right now, no. So, anyways, we must be the best leaders in our life, and like I said, we have to narrow it down. But this is where I'm saying where the levels are different. So you want to be a leader in your love life. I mean, I'm so tired of hearing men being like, oh my God, this, and that. And I get it. We've all been there. We all have a t-shirt. We got it. But way too much. So we have to take an active leadership role in our love life. Our personal life, right? We have to take a leadership role in our professional life, our emotional life, our addictive life, our addictions, our vices. You have to be a leader, because you know what? We all have them. We all have a vice. I don't care if it's your one cup of coffee or because or your gambling addiction, your drug addiction. You have to. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong. You have to be a leader in that too. That way you can be a functioning something, because when you don't, the outcome could be deadly. And I don't mean to make fun of it, but it is deadly. If you don't handle your addictions, if you don't lead your addictions, it could kill you. Your physical, health life, all these different parts of your life, you want to be a leader. And you might want to be like, well, before I go in that, and that's where I said, now you get the point, or the idea, where life in certain one of these attributes, or in many of these attributes that I mentioned, you're going to be farther ahead, or some you might be way below, some you might just be okay at. But that's where you already kind of, you're aware. Like, you might be great at your job in your professional life. You might be killing it, but your emotional life might be horrible. You can't connect with people. You can't, connect in a more intimate, people. Maybe you haven't, your relationships only last like 6 months to a year. Maybe, you know, your personal life with your friends and your families are amazing. So, and maybe your physical fitness is okay, but not great. So you get to figure out where you could point and pinpoint where you need the most work and be the best leader. And like every video game, like you know, when you play basketball or sports, or just any video game, you want to keep on building your stats so you can be even stronger and stronger and stronger. And overall, that's the message that you hear sometimes, in a good way, where the better off you become, not just with women. And that's where you hear it all: become the best part with women and you'll attract women. And you're still putting women in a pedestal in that scenario and putting them in a position of a leadership in your own life. So it's, you're still going to develop, you're still going to go down the same warped ass hole or loop that's going to end up not serving you or anything. But if you're deliberately going out and elevating your leadership in your own life in all these different aspects, you will then start bleeding over just raw, authentic leadership, the leadership that moves mountains, that builds nations, that can take you a state of uncertainty to a state of leaving legacies, of leaving, you know, a trail behind you, because now people are for sure certain that they can follow you, because it's just the way you carry yourself. You feel comfortable when this person tells you. You hear stories all the time, like, we could have died and I would have followed him. You know, I did follow him. You know, I didn't hesitate when we went into battlefield when he said it. Whatever. You know, some people are great, you know, military leaders and inspire, but you see it in arts, like, you know, where someone saw some amazing art and that led them to not then creating their own beautiful art. So it's all in where we are. You know, I remember seeing someone that was envious, not envious, but wanted to learn how to be, you know, play the piano. And we saw someone that played the piano beautifully. And I remember him being so mad and just talking all this ish about this dude. About, oh, you know what, if I did, you know, I don't have that kind of time, and making all these kind of excuses until the conversation was had. And I was like, well, you know, he probably put in thousands of hours into his craft, and that's the finished product. You're over here playing, you know, Madden with me, getting high, or, you know, just fucking off time. So, and when that conversation happened, that person became the leader in his life, and my criticism obviously became a little bit of the fire beneath his, you know, beneath his flame, or the wood beneath his flame. He got really good at piano. So it was identified, and you hear it a lot, and it's that we should be more blunt and more honest, but that's what a leader does, you know. And not a lot of, and that actually is true. I should have finished the thought process, and that is true, is that we need to be more blunt and honest. And that's what a leader does, is that he wants to make sure that he's directing you into the ultimate outcome. But at the end of the day, what's going to make us be the best characters and choosers of leadership if we're practicing it ourselves. I'm not saying you have to be the greatest basketball players, run for president, or be amazing. It's that if you're doing the things to be a leader in your own self, there is no quantum. Oh, I don't want to get into big words. There is no way that you will not start being the better leader to the people around you. And the people that don't want to follow you, guess what? You guys will start clashing. Stuff will start happening. So, and then that becomes more. And then you just start choosing better. You start taking a stand. You start being, you know, leading, going a direction, giving guidance. That's when when that occurs. You know, when enough of those are being lifted up, and which just becomes second nature. And you might ask, why does it matter for me to be a leader in my own life? Why does it matter if for me to have standards, or not even, or forget standards, just to have a active part of myself or in my life to make sure that I'm focused on leading in every one of these aspects: my love life, my emotional life, my personal life, my, my vice, my physical health. Like, why is that important? Is because men matter, you matter, so because men matter, because you matter, it's important for you to take that active position and not blame everyone else, not blame the ex, not blame society, not blame the fast food chain, not blame the the programming that we're receiving, because at the end of the day, we're men. And not saying whether, this is not about women, but I'm speaking to men, is we have to take our lives back in the direction of where we want our lives to go, and not let external forces dictate to us what it is and how we should feel and how we should go. Because as the troubling numbers that I keep on repeating every show, and I could have a counter, if I wanted to, just to hammer in the show, but I still haven't gotten the whole camera thing ready or done. The numbers of suicide, the numbers of self-harm, the number of depression, the number of these prescription antidepressants given to men on a daily basis, which leads to complications, which leads to, again, just a whole plethora of problems and complications that just leads to, again, the suicide rate among men being, unproportionately high. And just, not that I want women to catch up. We need men to stop that. And the only way is by keep on repeating these messages of hope, these messages of taking control again, making standards, making boundaries, having ethics, being moral, being a leader, and being a leader not only by example, but by example, but being a leader in our internal wiring. We don't have to tell anyone. We know where we're lacking, and we're working on that. When we don't have to tell anyone what we're working on ourselves, is when you're starting to take leadership, because it's not about them, it's about you. And the time when you become the best leader you can be, your life can do nothing but just head skyward. So I hope you guys found this thoughtful and made you guys think. Share the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for listening. Until next time.